So I'm Ali Mills and I'm the service manager of Can Young People's team. Hopefully you've all heard about us. We're the substance misuse service for the whole of Northamptonshire. Recently we've become Aquarius. Can used to be part of a bigger charity called Richmond Fellowship, and we were part of a consortium of services called Recovery Focus. A separate agency called Aquarius, that again some of you may have heard about, another substance misuse charity, we're also part of that. And on the 1st of October this year, we became Aquarius. It was a business decision in terms of going forward to make us a bigger charity, to make us more viable when we go out to tenders. And our service is currently out to tender, which I'll talk a bit about later on. So we've got 6 services actually at the moment: Bedfordshire, Oxfordshire, Northamptonshire, Birmingham and Wolverhampton. They're all similar services, but they also offer different localities, different kind of regional differences in those services. And as I said, we're now Aquarius, but we kept the name Can Young People's Team because Can have been known in Northamptonshire for over 40 years, and certainly the Young People Service has been going since 2001. So what we offer, obviously we offer to work with young people from age 11 to 19. We offer a dedicated worker for each area, so to make it easily accessible to young people. We go out and see young people where they are. We don't expect them to come to our office. We offer advice, information, brief interventions, but actually structured care planned work as well. The reality is young people never think they've got a drug and alcohol problem. They really like doing drugs and alcohol, so it's about us meeting them where they are in that journey of change and helping them to move forward. We are a free service and we are a confidential service. Obviously we work within Fraser guidelines, but we will offer young people confidentiality. Obviously safeguarding overrides that. And we work to the young person's goals. There's a big push at the moment about abstinence in terms of Public Health England, in terms of when we're discharging young people, they want them to be drug or alcohol free. I kind of feel this is slightly unrealistic expectation of some young people that they'll never drink alcohol again when they're only 15 years old. So we work to their goals, and their goals will often change as they go along. But we also offer professional training and consultation. So every quarter we put on some professional training that is free for professionals working with children come along to find out more about our service, more about drugs and alcohol, how to work with young people who are misusing drugs and alcohol. What we do know is that drug use among young people is changing, and actually, statistically, it's going down. There's less young people using drugs and alcohol every year, year on year, but actually those that are using more drugs, have got more complex issues, and are using larger amounts of drugs as well. And certainly with the new psychoactive substances, again, that's a massive change in how that's impacting on young people, and we're not really sure how that's going to impact on the future. It was mentioned earlier, so I've got my proof sheet here. It was mentioned earlier about cannabis and skunk, and it was mentioned earlier on by Sean. And obviously in Northamptonshire, all of the cannabis that is used is actually skunk, which means it's got a really high level of THC, which in terms of mental health has a much bigger impact than what we would have said before was just normal cannabis, if you like, for want of a better word. It's not called skunk, it's called lots of different names, but when it's been tested, it is in fact skunk. That is the predominantly being used in Northamptonshire. Now, the national average in young people services in the country is 80% of the young people will have cannabis as either the first, second or third drug of choice. Ours is 87%. In terms of alcohol, we're slightly less than the average, with the national average in 60% of young people in their services are saying alcohol is their first, second or third drug of choice. With us, it's 56%. It's actually far easier to get hold of cannabis or NPS than it is alcohol in this county. And as I said, in terms of NPS, in terms of national average, it was only about 5%. We have to submit stats to the National Drug Treatment and Monitoring Systems about the young people we work with, what drugs they're using, etc., to look at the trends and look at what's happening in the country. And actually, we were averaging 13% of our clients, young people who were referred to us, were saying they were using NPS as a first, second or third choice drug, compared to the national average of 5%. We're seeing at the moment a bit of a trend in a lot of cocaine use with younger people, but more worrying than that, we're seeing an increase in young people who are trying heroin. We've actually got a young person on the script at the moment, which is a long time since that's happened. I've been working for CAN for 15 years and is the manager for about 7 or 8. And actually we haven't had a young person on the script, opiate substitute script, for about 6-7 years. But we're seeing a trend where young people are telling us they're trying heroin, and I know there's a lot of heroin in Northamptonshire at the moment. So when we talk to young people and when we talk to professionals about, you know, different stages of use of young people and when they can come into our service, this is kind of one of the things we do. We talk about abstinence as being a stage of use because we should promote abstinence with young people. We talk about experimental stage because lots of young people will experiment with drugs. You know, a lot of young people will experiment with drugs. It's part of growing up. Okay, a lot of the people then will become a recreational drug user. If I asked for hands up in this room and said, how many of you would you say recreationally use alcohol, I'm sure a lot of people's hands would go up. Because recreational means you're in control, you do it socially, and it isn't a problem for you. Lots of people think their drug use, whatever your drug of choice is where they're at. But we work with a lot of young people at a stage what we used to call problematic. We don't use the word problem anymore because young people don't recognise that. But actually we say that increased risk. And increased risks of damaging their future potential. And actually we do work with a lot of young people who are daily using drugs and alcohol and who themselves would say they're dependent on these drugs. For us, a lot of young people that we work with, as I said, can be recreational users and dip into that kind of starting to be a problem, but with a bit of support and help they can move back. It's those young people that have got additional complexities that we have issues with. I think it was Sean that said at the beginning, about if that young person's quite well rounded and got a really good support network and they experiment with drugs and alcohol, then actually they're not going to get into too many harms because there's enough support around them. The ones that we work with are much more complex. So why do young people take drugs? As we said, less young people are taking drugs, the ones that are taking more. But why, given everything we know about the negative outcomes, do young people still take drugs? Okay, and obviously there's lots and lots of reasons. And the reason you start taking drugs isn't usually the reason you continue taking drugs. So it's all those things there about just for enjoyment, for relaxation, for escapism. Okay, it's about rebellion. For some young people it's a rite of passage. It's when everyone's got to try alcohol at some point. You know, again, lots of people in this room will remember the very first time they got drunk when they were a youngster. And it's about instant gratification. But for lots of our young people, they tell us the reason they continue using is what we would say is they're self-medicating. It's become a coping mechanism because actually their drug or alcohol use helps with their anger, helps with their anxiety, helps mask the voices in their head. And we see sleep as a massive issue with lots of young people saying, unless I smoke some cannabis before I go to bed, I'm unable to sleep. So as I said, the young people that we've got the most concerns about are the ones who have additional complexities in their life, such as looked after children. And again, in terms of when I talked about looked after children in this context of our service, yes, there isn't a tab that says leaving care. We have to record whether they're a looked after child, but that will include kids who are leaving care. Young people who are involved in crime. Now, there are dedicated drugs workers within the Youth Offending Service that, again, we oversee and we clinically supervise. So anyone involved in the criminal justice system will have a dedicated drugs worker for them. But for us, if that young person is neat, not in education, employment or training, if they've experienced domestic abuse or are experiencing it in a partnership, if they've got mental and emotional health issues, they're added to the complexity, and they're the ones that we end up working much longer term. Again, we've got some guidance about how long we work with young people, but the young people with these additional complexities are the ones that bounce in and out of our service, and actually we work much longer. And so when I talk about those emotional and mental health issues, we're talking about ADHD, we're talking about self-harm, we're very much talking about voices, we're talking about young people feeling really anxious, being low mood or depressed, and we're talking again a lot of the time about sleep issues. So which came first? Okay, we know the answer to this now. Scientists have discovered that it was in fact the egg that came first, because actually it wasn't two chickens that mated and had an egg, it was two other birds, and they mated, and then one of them had an egg that hatched the first ever chicken. So we've got the answer to that problem. The answer that's been with me since 2001 when we started working with young people, when I started as a drugs worker, was about which came first. Was it the drugs or was it the mental health? And we're still having that discussion today. You know, sadly, in lots of ways, we're still seeing that. We're still seeing in our service that when my workers come and see me and they go, I'm really concerned about young Johnny, he's, you know, got experience in all these mental health issues. However, what we're being told is he can't get an assessment from CAMS until he's stopped his drug use. And that's kind of still happening. When I think of the history of where we are in terms of drugs and alcohol and mental health, back in the day, we had two separate services. We had CAN and we had Sub-Zero, and we worked really well together. So often the route would be for mental health would be to the Sub-Zero, and we would get other referrals, but we'd also work alongside each other. Then we moved on a bit, and obviously funding was cut, and then we became a smaller service, but again, it included mental health workers within our drug service, and again, that was a really good model, I feel. Then after that, funding cuts yet again, and then we had a nurse, one of whom's in the room at the moment, which again was fab for us as a service, because if we've assessed a young person, and when we look at assessment, we don't just talk about drug use, we talk about a real holistic assessment about their family life, what they've experienced in the past. We do talk about emotional and mental well-being. So if we're getting some concerns regarding mental health, we could actually get a really quick assessment by the nurse, who would either then make a decision, well, I could do a couple of sessions with that young person, or actually they need a full formal assessment with CAMS, and there'll be a quicker route through, and that worked really well. Then, unfortunately, we had our nurse taken off us because of changes within CAMS, so now we're back to the old thing where we're having to facilitate referrals to CAMS through the RMC and say, really, can we work together to support this young person? Because for me, that's the only way forward, is when we're working together. So when I say working together, what we can do is we can do joint assessments, and that's been successful. When we were sitting as part of RMC, we have a complex needs worker who would go out and do joint assessments with young people that were referred into CAMS with a range of emotional issues, but also very clearly stating they're using drugs and alcohol. We can come up with a shared care plan. This whole thing about being told we can't see them until they stop using drugs. Well, obviously we do drug testing, and we've had to go down that route with some of our young people and say, okay, let's look at some coping mechanisms, let's look at reducing, let's look at what we can put in place to get you to come off drugs for a period of time so that you can have that full mental health assessment. But again, joint sessions if necessary. We're happy to facilitate and be flexible with that. One of the things we do look at is alternative coping mechanisms. We've got alternative activities. There was a discussion earlier, was talking about having a peer-led service. We've got Engage, we've got a youth steering group within our service where we can offer mentoring, we can offer activities, we offer training to young people. For any young person who comes in our service, has got access to all of these activities and support from other young people. And one of the things we do an awful lot of is about supporting young people to attend groups. So if you're sitting here thinking, well, how can I refer to this wonderful agency CAN to get some help for my young people? I've just had a discussion on my table about the difficulties is young people rarely self-refer because they're loving doing drugs and alcohol. They're not seeing it as a problem. It's the adults around them and the professionals who are going, why are you doing this? So we take referrals from anyone. You know, we can pick up a phone, we have got a form, it's not a complex form, it's very, very easy, but we will facilitate referrals where we can. And what we say is, we say, it's about talking to that young person, and it's not about saying, you've got a problem, you need to do something. It's about saying, you're making this choice that you want to do drugs, for whatever reason you want to do them, it's helping you, you feel. Why don't you have a one-off session with a drugs worker who can just talk about risks, maybe help you make sure that you're still in control and everything's okay. And that's much more accessible. And we will meet young people in McDonald's. We will come out to their houses. We will meet them anywhere, and you can sit in on the session as well. We've got an admissions process through A&E, which again is fairly new, it's probably about a year, and we're starting to get more admissions. So when young people turn up at A&E with an alcohol or drug related accident or incident, then they can make a referral to us, which is really quite good. I was asked to include some stats about our service. So obviously Q1, this is this year, these are fresh stats if you like. So Q1 is April, May, June this year. We actually saw 117 young people and we had 64 referrals. Obviously Q2 had 111 young people that we actually saw in our service and we had 60 referrals. We're not quite finished Q3, but as you can see, there's a bit of a gap. I know we are not seeing the young people and supporting the young people out there in the community that we should be. Without question, I know that's happening. I'm part of RISE, we get referrals that come in RISE, and regularly those referrals will say, young Susie or young Johnny is using cannabis and alcohol, and we haven't had a referral. So there's some reason we're not getting the referrals. We're not working with the young people that we should be working with, and we need to look at how we can change that. And certainly as a manager, I've been doing as much as I can to kind of promote our team and get out there. Massive changes within social care makes it quite difficult at the moment. So in terms of looked after children, that I didn't know, isn't that really consistency there in all the quarters? 17% of the children in our service are looked after children, which will include leaving care. We were set a target. I think the targets got taken away about 2 or 3 years ago by PHE, was that all services should have a minimum of 20% of looked after children within their service. We regularly exceeded that. Over the last 2 years, that's dropped and dropped. Again, we're not seeing. I was trying to work out how many looked after children are in the county. Someone must know. Does anyone know? About 1,000. So we've got 1,000 looked after children in our county, okay, and actually we're only seeing, currently in my service, there are 15 young people who are looked after. There is no way that there are only 15 young people who are leaving care or looked after who are misusing substances and need our service. Now, one of the things, again, we're trying to do was, several years ago, about 6-7 years ago, we had the substance misuse in adolescent questionnaire added to the LAC health review. So all looked after children have to have a healthcare assessment, and they would be asked a question: do you use drugs and alcohol? Yes. Is it a problem? No. And nothing would be done. So we got this screening tool put into that assessment so that actually the young people fill in the screening tool. It's really easy, really young people friendly, and if they answer yes to more than, I think there's 8 questions, it would indicate that actually they need to maybe see a drug and alcohol professional. And actually this did increase referrals. But what we've realised, again, because of all the constant change in Northamptonshire, that those questions are now not being asked anymore. So it's something we're looking to put back into place in terms of the looked after children's healthcare assessment. So in terms of, obviously this is about emotional wellbeing. I'm not sure how much of that you can see. But again, we're measured on that. We're measured on lots of things. We're measured on how quickly we see young people, how quickly we keep them in treatment, when we give them a care plan, how long they're in our treatment. Again, there's a huge call for us. When we discharge a young person, we have to give a reason. And obviously there's a bit of a push that it has to be abstinent. We're meant to be, young people are drug and alcohol free. The reality is most of our young people who leave our service are still occasional drug and alcohol users, because that's part of their goal and plan, and some of them are not going to sign up to being completely abstinent. But some of the things we're asked them the scaling questions at the beginning and at the end, and these are some of the health and wellbeing ones. And as you can see, the black one indicates that the national trend, and the green is our local Northamptonshire. We kind of pretty much marry up there, and this was done on 111 young people who exited our service. And as you can see, in terms of the change in life satisfaction score, there was an increase when they left our service. In terms of feeling worthwhile, though, again, there was an increase at the end of our service. Thank you. And the change in anxiety score, and again, we see lots of young people who are incredibly anxious. Some young people who are afraid to leave the house other than to go and get drugs, and actually sometimes they get the drugs brought to them. So again, we see an increase in how they feel about that. and the change in happiness score. So again, we ask these scaling questions right at the beginning and at the end, and we pretty much mirror or slightly above the average in terms of the young people that are in our service. For me, going forward, it is about how we merge mental health services, young people's drug and alcohol services, and have really closely links with looked after children going forward. Oops. I've missed the slide off. Okay, so my last slide was really to talk a little bit about the future in that we're going out to tender. I'm really pleased that actually 2 people have already spoke today about specialist young people's services as opposed to integrating them with adults. One of the proposals going forward in Northamptonshire is that the services, the drug and alcohol treatment services, are young people, adults and recovery services all in one together. There's a survey coming out, well it's out now, and what I'll do is I'll get Tom to email the link to everyone here, because I think it would be really good to have your feedback. Certainly if my professional opinion is that young people need a dedicated specialist service. And actually what I'd really like to see is for that service for us to be able to work with young people to 21, ideally 25. Currently, while we're a young people service that's only supposed to work up to 18, we regularly have young people 19 and coming up to their 20th birthday, because actually some young people do not fit that adult model. They're not able to get to that appointment, and if they miss that appointment, they have to join the end of the queue again. We're very much about going out, it's about supporting, it's about offering alternative activities. So for me, in terms of you having a view on what the new services look like going forward, I really do believe that actually we need to go back to the old models we had before, where mental health is embedded within our service, where the links are seamless, where we offer young people the whole service and not where you have to have a waiting list and we'll do this until we get that to come forward. So I really value that you look at this survey when it comes out, when you get the link, and have a look and put something on. Because for me, we need to offer our young people a dedicated service, as I said, where we offer a good service to our looked after children, our most vulnerable cohort, and make sure that their mental health needs, as well as their drug and alcohol needs, are met. My last slide did actually say questions. I think I've got a minute or so. Has anybody got any questions for me?
In some respects, an observation, Liz, I go out and do the review health assessment. Speaking personally, I think we always do ask about drugs and alcohol. We've got, I think, what you're referring to as the SMAP questionnaire available to us. If they answer yes to more than 5 questions it is on that, then that would hopefully prompt referral. Our difficulty, I think, is that often young people will maybe refuse to fill in that questionnaire. And when a referral is offered, and as you say very correctly, they're enjoying what they're doing. They don't have the motivation, and I find in the vast majority of cases, they'll decline that referral. And I feel very strongly that in many areas, I think that PAs are absolutely fundamental in this. And a large part of that is because that can hopefully bridge that transition gap from child to adult services. We, for a review health assessment, are having a snapshot of that child for an hour each year. So it's understandable that they're not necessarily going to accept a referral from us. But I think the use of places like Russell House and those kind of services, I think that's where we're going to manage to catch and address far more of these issues, I would say.
And I agree in terms of that, so the SMAP questionnaire, we were told that actually not everyone was using it routinely, and totally get the fact that, you know, people weren't just going, oh no, it's not a problem, not doing anything about it. There is a big issue in terms of young people wanting the service or feeling they need the service, and there's an apprehension. You're a young person, you're being told you've got to see a professional about your drug use. What's all that about? It's going to be, you know, quite a scary thing for young people to encounter. We are incredibly flexible, and that's why I said it's about the language we use with young people, about saying, you know, let's just see someone to talk about risks, make sure you're in control. It's about saying we'll come out to them, we'll meet them in Russell House, we'll be as flexible as possible. We've trialled drop-ins as well, so that people can then come along and just drop in, and again it's something we're open to explore with people. But for me it's about us getting together and saying, how can we ensure that these young people get the service that they need before it's too late? Because what stats are telling us from PHE is that they turn up in adult services when they're at sort of late 20s with massive substance misuse issues. And so for us, it's about prevention. We want to prevent our young people from becoming the adult entrenched users of the future. Anybody else? Thank you.